Is it on? Okay, so I'm going to spend about half an hour trying to sort of share, the landscape, or what I call the landscape of Metaverse, that eventually leads to different parts of the whole ecosystem, as well as, since we are in Linux Foundation event, as long as the related standards and open source projects, I think will play a very important role in the whole rollout. So I gave another presentation earlier today, mostly looking into like what does Metaverse mean to network and edge. I'll address a little bit of that, but today, because we're trying to look at the whole thing, I'm going to cover broader, so a little bit cover everything. So just a few quick words about myself. I lead the strategy in FutureWay on Metaverse, Web3, and Trust. As Annie noted, all these things are somewhat connected, right? And I think it's important to see that note, so that it's not just a technology that I happen to be working on, but more of seeing it as a broader business opportunity, as well as I would call a super cycle, or a trend, a mega trend of technology, so that we can look at from technology, but also look at economics, as well as the social aspects of what are all these happening. I think if we take all that into one place, it might give us a better view of what this is really going to be. So in this talk, I'm going to try to cover three things. First is the Metaverse as a trend, it's a new hot thing, but also looking at the landscape of Metaverse, and then come down to what about the standards, the organizations, and open source projects we think will play an important role here. So it's almost obligated nowadays to start with defining what exactly is it. That's because we all have a different view of that in our head. They're all right, all correct views, right? And people may complain, people may feel disappointed, but I think it's important to see it as a vision rather than a reality. So whatever we experience today, or we think is possible today, or even be able to imagine today, might simply be a rough hint of what may come. And so I like these two. I often quote them, but there are actually documents with over 100 definitions from all very experts in different fields. And these two give me some area I can talk to. So real time, I think it's a great thing. We are in the networking conference, so real time has always been the tough nut to crack since the very beginning of internet, right? Internet is famously best effort. Real time is always not in there. 3D, yes. Interactive, yes. Social, of course. And persistent. So these are sort of some of the qualities we want to see what the Metaverse is. And then the other definition is more of human perspective, which talks about immersive experience, which is the feeling of we are talking together in one place, and somehow we are directly related to each other. And that's really hard to achieve. Not only does the medium itself need to change, but also the content need to change. Not just the networking and devices and computing, right? But also how that present to me personally also need to change. So first-person immersive experience is another way to look at it. So I want to say that the definition I like is the easiest one, which is just the next iteration of the internet or the next technology platform, which is simply say, okay, whatever comes next need to be. But I think what we are imagining today will change the way we live, we work, social, and play. And it's going to have a huge economic impact measured in trillions of dollars. And on the right side, I quoted a few of the analyst report that came out this year. It's quite interesting that the one that actually sponsored by Meta came out the lowest. The highest one is from Citigroup. So you can imagine, some people are counting those tokens, right? It's going to have value, and that gives you a much, much bigger number if you include all the financial services it potentially can create. But in whatever way and shape we look at it, it's a huge opportunity, and I think nobody can miss this cycle. So it's still being imagined and developed, and but it is, to me, quite convincing that it is the next mega trend, like the keynote mentioned, right? You don't want to miss this train. Now, all these reports look at it in a decade. So these are reports covering numbers in 10 years. We all know, like in this industry, that's a long time, and predictions probably going to change. We don't know which is going to change, downward or upward. But I think it is a big trend we should all pay attention to. This particular chart I quote from McKinsey, which gave, so the report I think they produced is the value creation in Metaverse. Basically look at technology for the purpose of business, like where the revenues and profits going to come. And they come up with, I think, these quite nice 10 areas to look at. Naturally, there's a huge emphasis on the infrastructure, the hardware that go with it, the platform, or we may think of a cloud, etc. The platform that need to be built on top of it in order to content and real experiences can be created on that platform. On the very bottom, we also want to remember that internet, I mentioned that best effort is one of the biggest sort of internet design philosophy, right? The second one that I think if we remember, internet is to grow, to reach everybody, but without the trust built into it. Security is never an internet built-in thing. It's something we'll have to go, create on top of the internet, and that's proven very, very hard, and that's going to directly impact the actual realization of Metaverse, especially the trillions of dollars of a business. I don't think those will be created without the trust layer. So that relates to very much to the work that I myself do on identity, on a wallet, digital wallet, and how we can enable digital assets as well as transactions in digital world that's seamless and without the lot of the issues that we have today. So with that, I want to share this picture. This goes trying to cover everything that's very directly we feel like a Metaverse is going to be dependent on, because a lot of 3D and these interesting demos and experiences need AR, VR, mixed reality, that kind of technology. So the headsets, the devices you wear, the biometrics that you can produce, those are very important because that gives you the capability to feel immersive. And it's a seamless UI. Now, UI today we think of visually, but this will be a full body UI, if you think that way, right? Extended VR, UI, sorry. So that user experience is very fundamental. And that requires a huge amount of processing. In this morning's talk, I mentioned about it's both data intensive or computing intensive, but also networking intensive. So computing and GPUs and where those are available to you, how much you can put into your actual headsets, how much that need to be in the edge device, and those are extremely relevant, and how to make those programming very, very simple. The new web will have this GPU model of computation built into the interface itself. Soft platform, definitely we are, a lot of us are complaining about the platform, because the platform we have today is usually we call client server, and then we extend that to cloud, which is basically still it's just server gets humongously huge, right? But you still have this client and server interaction. For Metaverse to really work, I think we need to think about the software platform itself much more flexible or decentralized or peer-to-peer, however you want to make it more flexible, right? So it's not rigid, like where the data lives and where it is. AI and machine learning are almost a prerequisite, because if you do calculations of a network delay without predictions, without very smart way of predicting how the user can move their body, etc., you will never get to the latency that it's going to need. So I don't have a calculation being here, but one number, like even in the extremely idealized networking environment, the delay we are thinking about just for a round trip of a person's movement to the virtual model that need to be rendered and the communicated back through the network back to me takes about 70 milliseconds. That's not good enough. With AI predictions, you can reduce this number to about 8 milliseconds, which is much closer to what we want, right? And so those are, we all know in networks that you can do everything, but the propagation delay of the signal itself cannot be reduced. And so that portion need to be done by edge computing, but also edge computing with AI built into it. So digital twin, we'll probably talk about that later in the next picture, but Web3 identity ownership, those are very foundational. That enables not only the full society participation in this, but also that the economics can actually work, right? You are creating new value, and the experience actually create value for the whole ecosystem. And then, of course, our main topic here, network plus cloud and edge, and that is what I would like to dive deeper into. So the Metaverse in the area of cloud, edge computing, and the network connecting all of us, right? So this picture I will walk through together here. In the very middle is the visualization, I guess, a simple visualization of the 3D model. So in this case, the 3D model is a chemical plant, and the physical chemical plant is on the right side. And so you may have some kind of a digital twin technology allow the data somehow to go between them. So that's sort of the source of this 3D model. Creators, if you think about VR, right? Creators can add completely virtual made up things into that environment as well. So that creates even more enhanced 3D model. And then I depicted the 3 users here with 3 different colors. And each one, if they're remote somewhere else, they have their own surroundings. So if I'm working at home in the room, in my home office, that's my surrounding. If you're in the office or in the lab, all those surroundings have its own sensors and your headsets maybe, and whatever that device will generate the actual reality on that 3 environment. So for a particular user, the round trip, if you think about it, is like by just slightly moving my head when I'm looking here, I'm looking to the right side now, that rendering need to happen while the data is being detected by the sensor, let's say in my headset, and that information need to communicate all the way back to where the 3D model sits, let's say in the big clouds, right? And then that cloud will realize I made a move and then re-render the scene I'm seeing now. And that information then will be rendered, packaged into some kind of a portable format, right? that format has to be standardized somehow, and that format will come all the way back, transmitted back to me, which may or go through the edge, and then come back to my own headset device, and then my whole headset device do the final rendering and display. So that whole process is extremely the data, compute, and network intensive. So hopefully this picture captures the kind of requirement we need. How do we do better than the naive way of doing it, right? So we can think of, for example, the 3D model be cached somewhere in the edge device. That's very, very close to me. So my networking delay with 6G, let's say, it's down to single-digit milliseconds. Okay, and so that device then need to be able to sort of sync with the cloud, because the 3D model need to be eventually to be same. Even if with my headset doing AI predictions, and that prediction algorithm and learning algorithm need to run somewhere, and will be much easier if I run it on the edge than trying to go back all the way to the cloud. Because my movement is so quick, I can blink an eye, and the whole scene can potentially entirely change, right? And so, the conclusion I have is that we can do all the calculations, bandwidth requirement. These are all known if we make assumption of what kind of a video quality we want to have, how much of view that the personal headset will need to, and these numbers are very clear. The challenge is that how do we go integrate all of these technology together and reduce the latency so that we have so-called immersive experience. And so in this case, I think both the huge cloud computing data and computation that need to happen. It need to be much more scalable, much more reactive, responsive to any of these, because these will be a massive parallel real-time system, right? On the edge side, we need to learn to do what I call intelligent caching. So these are not simply downstreaming, sort of just produce a static data caching like we're doing today for watching a movie. The movie is static. This one's real. It's like almost like a real documentary being made in real time, right? And so and not one camera running, but you have in this case you can potentially have 1, 2, 3, 4 camera all running together. Each one of them is showing a different movie, right? Same reality, but the perception for the different user are totally different. They may be entirely looking at different directions. So anyway, so I thought this picture may give us a good sign of where the cloud need to go, where the edge need to go, and where the network need to go. So finally, we want to get down to say, hey, what about the standards and organization, the open source communities? And so this chart is meant to, this is very partial, and this is a huge space here. So I don't expect we can actually see them, let alone talk about all of them. So I want to highlight a few. I thought maybe just generate some interest, and if we have later have discussions on this, we can dive to any area we want to. So the one area I like, I think is going to be very important, is the 3D XR Web3 standards. So these, Cronus, for example, has been our graphics standard for a long, long time. And here are highlighted are some of those that would go beyond the processors, but to our the software APIs, to where those the actual computation. If you remember, before we do rendering, the data need to come in certain format, right? So that format is what we actually communicate. It's similar to the format we use for streaming movies. And so that format need to be tied to how you do GPU processing in your headset. And so all those need to happen. And we will also want to do, there's also a version of the same thing in the web. So the browser need to implement that. So that happens in W3C, which I highlighted a few. WebXR is doing the immersive web standardization. Web GPU, as the name says, is basically how do we enable GPU through for the browser. The other two, DID, and DID is a decentralized identifier, and the verifiable credentials, or VC, are two of the, I think, most important standards out of W3C that will help establish the kind of trust we need on the web. So that's part of like Web 3. Metaverse interoperability community group is a much larger effort with lots of participants trying to understand more comprehensive efforts going on with within W3C. The other portion will be networking related. So I would highlight a few of the effort. One is called time-sensitive networking, AO2.1, within IEEE. IETF has a complementary one, so that will be a layer 2, a new, like you imagine a low latency Wi-Fi, low latency Ethernet kind of effort. The other one is deterministic networking, DetNet, in IETF, that is in layer 3. So how do we, improve layer 3 to be able to account the latency requirement, have a strong bound on that. And the last one is 3GPP, and of course, we've been talking about 5G, right? And we're still working on it. And so the release 19, their work basically in big numbers. And each release is supposed to be, fundamentally technology jump. The current active work going on is called release 18 in 3GPP for mobile. Release 19 is more of a kind of study or forward-looking effort. And within that, there is a localized mobile metaverse service as a study project. So that's also, I think, very important to watch. And then we are in the Linux Foundation event, and these are some of the ones that we at FutureWay and I myself too are very got involved with. And so I'll probably just point to the logos and just a few words about them. So Trust of IP is working on, like the name says, how do we establish trust over internet? And that's a very, very big topic. There's many different working groups in there. I want to highlight, like this week, we just released a reference architecture on Monday, Tuesday, I think. And so if you guys are interested, we talk about, describe how to what is the general approach we have to take? So reference architecture to create trust relationships over the internet, for entire internet, so that you don't have to worry about, worry about accounts, passwords, and this kind of authentication, that kind, and also like frauds on the internet, all of those issues. Do we have a general solution for it? And that's what this project is working on. It's really interesting. I strongly recommend. I happen to be the main author of the document, so I definitely want to promote it. On top of that, it is very faint, hard to see. ASWF, yeah, it's Academy Software Foundation. Academy Software Foundation. It is Academy as the Academy of Sciences, so it's the Hollywood stuff, which have lots of projects describing a scene. Like, how do you describe this room? And what kind of color? What kind of when you watch movies, some movie give you this warm, happy feeling of it. Others make you very nervous and anxious, right? And that's a lot. Color plays a lot of very interesting role in all of this. And how do you describe all of that? So that's ASWF, also Linux Foundation project. The third one, Open Wallet Foundation, it's still forming, it's new, hasn't been officially formed yet, but as the name suggests, it's Open Wallet as a digital container that may have your ID cards, your keys, and yes, money and tokens, right? But also like your credentials, like your diploma or your credentials as an accountant or as a lawyer. All those students, right? All those can be as content in the wallet. So that's it's a big enabler for digital assets, safety, security, but also like transactions. O3DF, it's a open source implementation of the game engines, 3D game engines. We have commercial ones like Unity, for example, but how about a open source implementation? So that's a very, very important part of that. It's another Linux Foundation project. DIF is Decentralized Identifier Foundation. As the name suggests, again, it's a lot about the DIT. Decentralized IDs. So this is really an effort to replace PKI. If people are familiar with the security background, we always have CAs and PKIs today, and it's not very scalable. It's not very safe either. So both TOIP, Trust over IP, and DIF are working on replacing or at least add to another dimension of how we may do security there. C2PA, it's another name for media authenticity. So the two C's are content. Well, one is correlation, and the other one is content, and which is like media, photos, videos, etc. And P is provenance, A is authenticity. If you know fake media, how do we make the metaverse without fake media? How can we make them all real, right? And so that's what this project is about. Hyperledger, you guys probably all know as very open source implementation of different kind of ledgers or blockchains. And it's a huge part of how do we make these content and other type of trust. That leaves us to really important one, I think, of networking, of edge, cloud native, and this event, Centaurus. I think I will leave to my colleagues to introduce you more about Centaurus and why it is a new generation of a cloud platform that is specifically going to better support Metaverse and Metaverse stage. All right, so key takeaways. I think personally, I like to see a metaverse is a vision for future of the internet, and what exactly it will be depends on us. It depends on what we want, right? I think there's a lot of room, huge opportunity for us to imagine what it is, and our work to make it possible. What it will become is determined how we prioritize what it should be. Do we like, what is our priority in life, in work, in every aspect? Those priority, I hope, will be reflected in our work. And so we can think of this whole thing as technology, but also economics and social. So all these dimensions, I think, come to play. Standardization and open source will play critical roles. I mentioned many of the areas in this, and they are not still not comprehensive. But to realize this vision, I think both on standards but also on open source really will be critical and probably more strategic than a lot of the nitty-gritty technical problems we solve. So how do we lay the foundation well will determine the success of Metaverse. Again, I go back to the early internet. They made a few decisions. those decisions are always hard to make. Like, for example, they decide to do security later. Well, yeah, eventually the costs are going to come to you. But in the early days, you can't have everything perfect, because if they're all perfect, then you will wait forever. And so there's some trade-off we have to make. I don't have the right answer for it, but I think as an industry, we need to sort of pick these decisions very, very carefully. And last one is that all this means that it requires some new capabilities and architecture in cloud, edge, and network. I alluded to some of those, and those capabilities are not natively built today in the internet, right? We talk about, real-time guarantees. It's not there. We talk about really, really good and convenient security. It's not there. We talk about that cloud and edge need to collaborate much more. The edge will become much, much smarter. That's not how we use them today. And we talk about the network need to provide not only higher bandwidth, but very low latency, and that's also not yet true. So we have a lot of work and a lot of opportunities. So with that, I want to just, for anyone who wants additional information, these are, one of them is the talk I gave in the morning, and the other one is a bit earlier about Metaverse Web3 and what kind of trust it's going to need. So I will leave that to you and see if anyone has questions or want to share any thoughts. Any questions, comments? Share your opinion. All right, if not, I think I'm done. Back to you, Annie. So the question is about the device, or like headsets and other personal devices, and where we are and how far we are really reaching what is required. So today, the device side has lots of different directions people are going. So it's kind of wonderful to see this diversity of devices. On the very low end, you can have essentially as an accessory of your smartphone. So I'm hoping like, one really nice, simple glass, right? It looks almost like a normal glass. Will show up. I'm betting, every year I'm betting next year it's gonna show up. And it's not too expensive. It's similar to like a watch, right? We are most comfortable wearing a watch and the glasses. And so these are very common to us. We don't feel strange. And I think those are coming. And they are basically designed as an accessory of your smartphone, so go with your phone really well. So that's one end. In the very high end, we have devices that cost today, anyway, at least in thousands, maybe tens of thousands. So these are like, I've tried a device that's designed for factories, in a dangerous environment use. I've seen one that is designed for like a flight simulation to train pilots, right? And those devices are really amazing. But the software in there are not perfect yet. So I get like motion sickness because, but those things can be tuned. But the capabilities are all built into it. And so those devices are coming quite a long way. There's a lot of sensors. The sensors start to do quite wonderful things. But whether it's commercial ready, probably not. I would bet that the first thing that's coming commercial ready will probably be the glass and then game headsets, which basically there are iterations of what we already see. Sure, yeah. So this is so I covered quite a lot of problems and challenges, but as an investor, if I were an investor, where do I bet my money on? I think that's a much harder problem. The different technology, they tend to have different curves. Even though we look at the metaverse, have lots of things all in one space, right? But like a device and network are quite different, right? The network industry go to quite different pace than someone make devices. For a short, investors, I assume they want to look at in, maybe a relatively short time frame, not a whole decade, but maybe, 2-3 years. Then a shorter cycle may work better. So definitely a glass that's comfortable, that can be complementary to your mobile phone seems great. A lot of apps that rely on Web3, for example, seem to be great. They are ready to deploy, and there's a commercial, and consumer appeal to it right away. Networking, I don't know how investors think about them, but those are long-term investment, and that need to happen in some way. Maybe different kinds of investors may be interested in that, but not the very quick ones. Yeah.
Any more questions? Keep coming. All right. Thank you.